Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2, sessions 4 and 5. We're just going to segue into a whole lot of amazing dietetics and human nutrition research today. We have a lot of presenters who have created some pre-recorded presentations that we're going to play. And then at the end of their presentations, we have live audience Q&A. So this presentation is being recorded. All of the videos will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and I will gladly share those links with you once the videos are uploaded. Questions are highly encouraged. So our attendees, you will type in your questions using the Q&A feature in your toolbar. Our panelists are also invited to ask questions as well. You all can either type it in the Q&A, or you can also raise your hand and unmute yourself. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to get started with our first presenter, Alyssa Bickett.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Bickett, and I will be presenting my poster on weight fluctuation and dietary habits of progressing college students. Obesity and being overweight is categorized as weighing above a healthy average, often based on BMI, which is body of their life. Their daily habits, which include sleep and eating schedules, as well as their exercise routines, are subject to great change. Many students have little to no knowledge of how to prepare healthy meals or do physical activity, and are no longer in a regulated high school sport. A quantitative study was designed to research weight gain during the duration of college and was conducted via an electronic survey. The survey collected information in relation to weight gain and adiposity rates amongst older or upperclassmen college students. It was hypothesized that students will increase their weight initially and then decrease or plateau in their adult weight that they have gained during the latter part of college. The target population was the University of Kentucky undergraduate students. The link to the survey was sent out to the researchers' immediate groups, attaining the appropriate sample population by the snowball method. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, an online study sent to individuals will be the best and safest way to collect information. There may be obstacles in achieving the appropriate number of the population, but this can be overcome by posting on social media and inviting friends. It can be hypothesized that there will be a correlation between the year in school students are and the relationship with healthy eating practices. A t-test will be done to compare the values and percentages of certain questions compared to one another in the survey that was sent out. A Likert scale was used for many of the questions, and also a t-test was performed to compare the questions. As students' time progressed in college, so did their lifestyle habits. Out of the 65 responses that were eligible for data collection, 12 of them would strongly disagree, 21 would somewhat disagree, and 14 would neither disagree nor disagree that their eating patterns have declined in high fat, sugar, and calorically dense foods and increased consumption. When asked specifically how their weight had changed, there was a multitude of replies, extending from "my muscle mass has increased due to weightlifting," or "I have more fat due to drinking alcohol." The survey also provided questions about a wellness seminar on weight gain in college students. Out of the 69 responses, only 6 students would strongly agree that they would like to participate in a weight control program. The results of the survey were as I hypothesized in correlation to previous studies that were part of a meta-analysis. Out of the 79 participants, 58 or 73% of those had claimed that they had increased in weight during their time in college. This is very comparable to the study done by Anderson and Shapiro. They concluded that roughly 70% of the 135 students they weighed over the course of their first year of college had increased in weight. One of the studies analyzed the importance of freshman and sophomore year weight gain. One of the researchers deemed that freshman and sophomore year were a crucial period of weight gain and often stayed with students through their time in college. According to the CDC growth charts in the 50th percentile, both males and females from the ages of 18 to 20 were expected to increase 7.9 pounds in males and 5.1 pounds in females. When comparing freshman student eating habits to junior and senior eating habits, a statistically significant response was found with a p-value of 0.0128 using a t-test. It was concluded that freshman students are subject to eating higher calorie and fat diets in comparison to older students. There is a statistically strong relationship between the age of students and the diet that they are choosing to eat. A p-value of 0.00832 was found when comparing the year in college that the student was and if they were consuming more foods and high fat and calories than what they were in high school. The strengths of the survey can be validated, include that it was a validated survey and a well-efficient scoring system. Weight gain in college students is very normal and often healthy. However, significant weight gain during the first few years, commonly known as the freshman 15, kick off adult obesity in normal weight young adults. The survey participants concluded that the majority of weight gain, if weight was gained in college, was during their first and second years as a college student. Further research should be conducted in this category, especially during the changes that the current pandemic has provided. Thank you for coming to my poster presentation.
Good grammar and spelling.
Sorry about that. I didn't think you wanted to hear all that. Okay, Alyssa, does anyone, it looks like you have a question in the Q&A box if you want to pull that up.
Yes, the question reads, as a human nutrition senior, what advice would you give to incoming students about weight gain? Does your research change what advice you give? I think I had personal experience with this just because I initially gained weight my freshman and sophomore years in college, and it was very prevalent. And looking back in photos and stuff like that, you can just see I never really weighed myself that often. But I would say that my eating habits have definitely become more routine now, whereas I had very sporadic eating habits in the dorm of I would eat snacks and then not necessarily whole meals. And so my advice to freshmen coming into college would be to make a meal plan. It doesn't have to be complete meals. It's just I'm going to eat breakfast at this time. I will eat lunch around this time, and just have a schedule that you can incorporate different types of snacks and then build off of that into working on the food groups that you're eating instead of just trying to eat something to make up for it. And also the exercise routine. I played sports in high school. I was very, very active. And then I found that me managing my time in college was very hard first semester because I would sporadically go to the gym as well. I never made direct time. And as I've gotten older, I understand that that's very important to me. And now I will set aside time and I work out very consistently. And I think that just making a routine for myself and being comfortable with that has worked very well for me. And I think it can work for other students as well. And I think the research that I've done of freshmen eating more calorically dense foods just because the dining halls are readily available to them. So it's fast food on campus, and the gyms not being there as close as what some now with alumni on campus, it's more easy for North Campus students. But whenever I was a freshman, they had to go to the YMCA downtown. And a lot of kids just didn't want to go to the gym because it was very far. And now that a lot of people, as we've gotten older, have cars and they have access to gyms that aren't on campus, I think that has helped a lot as well.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Alyssa? Alyssa, I have a question for you. What was most surprising about your study?
I think we've all heard the phrase the freshman 15, and I kind of highlighted that in my poster as well. And then the more that I looked into the CDC growth charts, it's very, very normal for people to gain 5 to 7 pounds because we're entering a different stage in our lives. And it's healthy to gain weight is what I think was the biggest revelation to me. Of we were all told you should just try to stay the same weight that you are in high school. You should really try for that. But a lot of people come to college and they will also lose weight because they figure out healthy eating patterns and they figure out what's actually good for you instead of just eating whatever your parents fix. And so I think that that was a really big one. And just learning how your body works is a big one too.
Good job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, well, oh, why is this doing this to me? Sorry. New share. It is not wanting to play nice. Are you all seeing? Do you see Alyssa's title slide? One of the panelists, can you all tell me?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. Thanks, Julie. Okay. All right. So okay. Sorry, you all, like this is. Okay. All right. Samantha, you are up next.
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Udarbe and I'm a senior studying human nutrition and Spanish. I'm very excited to present this research on behalf of the Department of Dietetics and Human Nutrition entitled Assessing the Validity and Reliability of 24-Hour Dietary Recalls Between Researchers of Varying Experience Levels. First, I will share some background information about this subject. The USDA multiple pass method is a standardized method used to collect dietary data for national surveys and research purposes. This method is also used to collect dietary data for the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which assesses the health and nutritional statuses of adults and children in the United States. There is little data assessing the differences in these dietary recalls between nutrition professionals of different experience levels, including students. However, it is important to evaluate the validity and reliability of these 24-hour dietary recalls between researchers in order to understand which food groups are more or less accurately recorded. Therefore, the purpose of this study was to identify how the validity and reliability of the 24-hour recalls of low-income Hispanic immigrants collected using the USDA multiple pass method differ between researchers with different experience levels. First, I will briefly describe the original data collection methods used for the secondary analysis that I'm presenting today. The primary data was collected via the Cultural Values and Diet Study that recruited participants from 3 community clinics in Hispanic dense communities in Kentucky. The data collected from these participants included the Mexican American Cultural Values Scale and demographic survey questions, anthropometric measurements, 24-hour dietary recall, and electronic medical records. The data was collected by 3 researchers, 1 research dietitian with more than 10 years of experience as a dietitian, 1 graduate research assistant, and 1 undergraduate research assistant. For this study, researchers noticed differences in the 24-hour recalls among the 3 data collectors, providing an opportunity to examine which food groups are more or less accurately recorded. All of the 24-hour recalls from the Cultural Values and Diet Study were independently reviewed by 2 trained registered dietitians and were excluded from the primary data if there were unusual recalls due to fasting for labs, missing portions of food, like the number of slices of bread or the amount of cream or sugar in coffee, for example, or if there was specific information missing, such as the ingredients on a pizza or the type of tortilla, whether that was corn or flour. We conducted a NOVA test to analyze the differences in continuous variables such as age, BMI, total calories, percent calories, and grams of dietary fiber. For the categorical variables, gender and country of origin, chi-square tests were used. The significant level was set at a p-value of less than 0.05. For the current study, a total of 197 of the total 214 dietary recalls were used in the secondary data analysis. 17 were excluded due to missing demographic data. Our results section presents demographics and differences between the 3 data collectors. Both Table 1 and Figure 1 indicate participant age, gender, and country of origin. The columns show the means and percentages of what researchers collected from their participants. Participants were predominantly female and Mexican, with a mean age of 39.1 years. There was a significant difference in the mean age recorded by researchers, with the most experienced researchers participants having significantly older age than the graduate research assistant. Not indicated in the tables is the mean BMI of the participants, which was 30.6, and there were no significant differences in the mean BMI collected between researchers. Table 2 presents the dietary intakes of the participants. The columns show the means of each researcher. There were no significant differences in the percent calories of carbohydrates, proteins, and fat collected by the 3 researchers. There were, however, significant differences in the total calories and dietary fiber collected, with the experienced researcher showing significantly more than the undergraduate research assistant. There are 3 key findings from the current study. First, we found that the level of experience of researchers impacted to some degree the validity and reliability of the 24-hour recalls collected. The most experienced dietitian, which also happened to be the older than the 2 graduate and undergraduate research assistants, may have influenced the participants recruited, and therefore explaining the significantly higher age of the participants in the registered dietitian. Macronutrient recordings were not significantly different between the 3 researchers, which indicates that the main dietary components of foods consumed were accurately recorded. The dietitian was able to identify additional calories that came from preparation techniques, condiments, beverages, candy, sweets, and snack foods, which are often where added calories are underestimated. One example is that the dietitian asked the participant about helping eat leftover food from their children when the participant was accompanied by their children. Other reasons for variations in calorie intake can be due to the larger variety of carbohydrate foods than protein foods, which could have led to the differences in patient reporting and data collection. There are, for example, varieties of fruits, vegetables, breads, and other grains compared to meats, which are a primary source of protein. One limitation to this study is that recalls were collected from diverse Hispanic ethnic groups, which could have led to inconsistencies if a researcher was not familiar with specific dishes. Variances in typical Hispanic foods, for example, Mexican tamales are prepared with different ingredients than ones from El Salvador, or if the researcher was unaware of specific preparation methods of the participants' distinct culture. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Samantha. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, gracious, Sam, you've got all kinds of questions.
Yeah, so the first question says, why do you think fiber was different? And do you think the younger age of students and grad students influenced the participants' answers? So to go off that first question, I think that the fiber was different, like I mentioned at the end of my video, because there are a large variety of carbohydrate foods, including vegetables, fruits, grains. And I think with that wide variety of carbohydrate foods, there's a potential that that is where the significant difference was lower for the undergraduate student that was recording significantly less dietary fiber. And for the second question, do you think the younger age of the student and grad student influenced the participants' answers? I definitely think it is a possibility, especially because as you go through this department and through these programs, you do learn a lot more about how to record these dietary recalls. And I think with more experience in terms of being in classes that you learn how to record these dietary recalls, I think that could make a huge difference in those differences.
Very nice. So I have a question about your research. So how did you first get connected with research? And then what are your plans beyond this?
Yeah, so I actually got connected with Dr. Julie Placencia due to her research with the Hispanic population. Like I mentioned kind of towards the beginning, I'm actually double majoring in human nutrition and Spanish. So I thought that for my capstone, it'd be a great opportunity to kind of combine these two subjects because there is a lot of research done based on the culture, the Hispanic culture, and how it impacts diet. But specifically for this project, the cultural values and diet study was already done. And when I talked to Dr. Placencia, there was a secondary data analysis that we found opportunities for me to kind of further evaluate the differences in these dietary recalls. I actually am not pre-dietetics. I don't plan on becoming a dietitian. So I think it was something that was really interesting to learn more about because I personally have no experience conducting these 24-hour recalls. So I think it was really interesting to understand the differences that can arise between these different interviewers for these 24-hour recalls.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Good job, Sam.
Thank you.
With your presentation. And we are going to go on to our third presenter for today, Jessica Durbin.
Hello, my name is Jessica Durbin. I am an undergraduate student in the departments of Dietetics and Human Nutrition at the University of Kentucky. And today I'll be presenting on my research entitled The Use of Dietary Supplements in Relation to BMI in College Students. This project aimed to determine the relationship between BMI and the frequency of use in 3 different types of supplements: multivitamin, multimineral, protein, and immune support supplements. Participants being studied were students at the University of Kentucky, and it was hypothesized that BMI would be negatively related to supplement use, indicating that participants with a lower BMI would use supplements more frequently based on conclusions from peer-reviewed literature. This study consisted of a cross-sectional survey distributed electronically in the spring of 2021. The survey examined demographics and anthropometrics, as well as the frequency of use and reason for use for all categories of dietary supplements. The body mass index, or BMI, was calculated based on the reported height and weight of each participant. The categories being analyzed were multivitamin, multimineral, protein supplement, and immune support supplement. The frequency of supplement use was evaluated, considering 0 days to be no use, 1 to 4 days per week to be sporadic use, and 5 to 7 days per week to be regular use. Participation in this study was completely voluntary and no incentives were provided for participation. On the far right, you'll find 3 pie charts that indicate the frequency of use for participants of this study. They're separated by category. On the far left, you'll see multivitamin, multimineral, and then protein, and then immune support supplement. There are 57 students at the University of Kentucky completing this survey, and for each supplement category. BMI values were calculated for average and standard deviation, and 3 separate t-tests were conducted for each supplement category. These t-tests were analyzed for the differences in BMI of participants who were regular supplement users compared to sporadic and non-users. A p-value of 0.05 was used to determine statistical significance, with a p-value of 0.021 for the category comparing BMI of regular and inconsistent users of multivitamins and multimineral supplements was shown to be statistically significant. A Pearson correlation test was also conducted to compare each type of supplement use to BMI. Multivitamin, multimineral, and immune support supplements have a weak negative correlation, indicating that consumption of these supplements is weakly related to decreased BMI, whereas consumption of protein supplements is weakly related to increased BMI. At this bar chart in the middle column, you'll see the average BMI for each category of supplement user. You can see on the left, we have multivitamin, multimineral listed for sporadic and regular. And the same is true for the protein and immune support supplement categories. You can see that the average BMI of sporadic users of multivitamin and multimineral supplements is higher than that of regular users. And the same is true for immune support users. This is indicative of the negative Pearson correlation test. The reverse is true for the protein supplement users, where the regular protein supplement users have a higher BMI than the sporadic supplement users. Some key findings for this study were that the data relating to BMI to multivitamin, multimineral supplement use showed the statistical significance. It also hypothesized that the negative correlation was true for both multivitamin, multimineral, and immune support supplements, but both showed a weak correlation. The protein supplement showed a weak positive correlation with BMI, indicating that protein supplementation may be related to higher BMI, which may or may not be the goal of consumers of this type of supplement. In conclusion, seeking to examine the relationship between BMI and different categories of dietary supplements, the results of this study are conclusive that BMI is negatively related to the use of multivitamin, multimineral supplements, as shown by the t-test and the Pearson correlation test. There's also a weak positive correlation between multivitamin, multimineral supplements and immune support supplements in relation to BMI, but the opposite is found true with protein supplements. Thank you.
Good job. And let me apologize because I think I skipped Sam Cundiff. So we'll go back to Sam. Let's see. So Jessica, let's see if you have questions in your Q&A box. Is Jessica here? No. Okay. So we will go back. Is Sam here? Sam Cundiff?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Okay. Sam, I'm sorry I skipped you.
No, you're fine.
So we're going to go back over here. Okay. Are you ready, Sam?
I'm ready.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Sam?
Today I'll be talking about creatine response with varying levels of protein intake following a cross-sectional study design. I decided to pursue this research because I'm extremely passionate about exercise nutrition as well as supplement use, and me and my friends have had drastically different results from supplementing with creatine. Creatine monohydrate is the most widely researched ergogenic aid on the market. This supplement claims to increase muscular strength, muscular endurance, and quicken muscle recovery after workouts. However, not everybody is going to respond the same to creatine. Therefore, there's a classification system put in place for creatine users. Individuals who respond fully to these three claims are labeled as full responders. Those who respond only to one or two of these claims are labeled as partial responders, and those who do not respond to creatine are labeled as non-responders. Why this is the case is largely unknown. But switching over to our other variable in protein, it has been scientifically proven that taking protein after workouts can help repair torn muscle fiber leading to muscle gains. Therefore, the aim of this research is to determine the relationship between protein intake and response to creatine supplementation among the UK student body using a cross-sectional survey. This cross-sectional survey was distributed through university-wide group messages at UK, and the data was collected using Qualtrics and then exported to Excel for data analysis. The questions that were asked on the survey had to do with demographics, protein intake, creatine use. Specifically with creatine use, individuals had to consume at least 5 grams of creatine per day for the last 2 weeks. That was my inclusion criteria question. However, after about 75% of the way through data collection, it was found that there weren't many people meeting that inclusion criteria of taking that 5 grams of creatine per day. So to combat this, there were 2 questions added to the end of the survey to ask why these individuals were not consuming creatine. But getting into our statistical analysis, it was determined that the Fissures Test was the best way to interpret the results. The amount of protein intake per kilogram of body weight per day was determined for each individual meeting that inclusion criteria. Individuals that consumed at least 1.5 grams of protein per day per kilogram of body weight were placed into the satisfied protein category, and those who fell short were placed into the unsatisfied protein category. The individuals in both of these groups were compared to each response of creatine. So going into the results section, we can see at the top, there's the race distribution graph along with the gender distribution graph. The gender distribution from the sample was very indicative of the target population because the target population was 44% male and 56% female. Just below that, we can see the Fissures Test results. We can see those 3 Fissures tests that were run of increasing strength, increasing endurance, and quick recovery. And we received a p-value of 1 for each of those tests. Just below that, we can see why individuals aren't taking creatine. This bar graph was formulated from those last 2 questions asking why those individuals weren't taking creatine. And the overwhelming majority of people didn't know what creatine was, and they didn't understand the effects of creatine. That was the reasoning behind why they aren't taking creatine. We can also see that the overwhelming majority of individuals who aren't taking creatine and they didn't know what creatine was and its effects were female. Getting into the discussion and conclusion aspect of this study, the study did have some strengths and limitations. The prime limitation was that there was only 13 individuals meeting inclusion criteria, which, you know, the results of the study might not necessarily be indicative of what is going on. Strength of the study was that the sample population was very indicative of the target population, as we mentioned before. The p-value of 1.0 that was achieved from all 3 Fissures tests shows that there was no relationship between the amount of protein consumed and creatine response. However, like I said before, this might not necessarily be indicative of what's actually going on because of the very few people that actually met that inclusion criteria. There were only 13 individuals who actually met it. And like we said before, the main reason why individuals were not consuming creatine was that they didn't know what creatine was and they didn't understand its effects. So I think that there's some room for education, especially among females at UK, about creatine, what it does, and how it affects the body. But just because we found a p-value of 1.0 doesn't mean that research should stop. I still think that research should still explore this relationship by recruiting more individuals who consume creatine. Additionally, I think altering the data collection format from a cross-sectional study design to an in-person assessment might provide more genuine results in terms of creatine response.
Thank you, Sam. And let's see. Sam, it looks like you have a question in the Q&A.
Okay, let's see. Okay, the question asks, where do you think most users or non-users get their information on creatine use? Do you think people are seeking advice from healthcare providers or more media / non-health professionals? I think this is a really good question. I think most people are probably getting their information from media sources like YouTube or even websites like bodybuilding.com. I don't really think that they're asking their healthcare providers whether or not they should be on creatine and what creatine actually does.
Sam, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Were your results surprising at all?
I would say yes and no. I was kind of shocked at first that I only had 13 individuals actually meet that inclusion criteria of taking 5 grams of creatine per day. I just think the pandemic really made it challenging for me to actually reach those people because I know a ton of people that take creatine, including myself. So I think that was, one major obstacle, and that was, surprising. I was expecting to have at least, 30 to 50 individuals meeting that inclusion criteria. But in terms of the variability in the response, I'm not really shocked because I know so many people have so many different responses to creatine. Like for myself, I only respond positively to creatine with recovery after workouts, whereas like one of my friends, he responds fully to those 3 claims of creatine. So there's just a very wide amount of variability in creatine use.
Interesting. I would rank in the I don't use it because I don't know much about it category. Sorry, Sam. Does anybody else have any other questions for Sam? Okay, Thank you, Sam. Great presentation. Okay, so we've done Jessica. Okay, so Susanna Goggans, you are up next.
Hi, my name is Susanna Goggans. I am a senior human nutrition student, and my project is the relationship between fitness tracking devices and compulsive exercise behaviors among college students. I am interested in this topic because I have worn a Fitbit for many years, and I was interested to learn more about the effects that fitness tracking devices can have on our health. So fitness trackers include pedometers, accelerometers, and smartphone applications such as the iPhone Health app that track steps. They typically have a step goal of 10,000. And while we know this can have amazing effects on our physical health, it's important to investigate what effects it can have on our mental health, specifically compulsive exercise behaviors, which is defined as the continual rigid and extreme urges to exercise. There is currently little research on this topic. For one, because fitness trackers have not been around too long, and also because compulsive exercise behavior is a new term. This is specifically concerning for college students because they are more susceptible to mental illness and they frequently use these fitness tracking devices. The study aims to investigate the relationship between fitness trackers and compulsive exercise behaviors among college students, with the hypothesis that those who use fitness trackers will display more compulsive exercise behaviors. If you look at the bottom of my left-hand column, you will see the methods section. So data was collected from 123 college students through cross-sectional surveys that were distributed on social media platforms and major clubs at the University of Kentucky. This study collected a variety of data, including fitness tracker use, motivation to exercise, and the compulsive exercise test. The compulsive exercise test is a validated research tool that has scores from 0 to 120. The higher that you score on this test means the more compulsive exercise behaviors you are displaying. If you look in the middle of the left-hand column, you will see the demographics of my sample population versus the target population. So unfortunately, my demographics did not line up perfectly with the target population, which is a limitation of the study. My results section is in the middle column of my poster. So at the very top, you'll see a pie chart, which is figure 1. This displays the percent of my population that used a fitness tracker. So 60% of my sample population used a fitness tracker, which is actually comparable to some of the studies that are reviewed in the literature. Usually in the literature, it seemed about 60 to 70% of adults use fitness trackers. If you look below that graph, you'll see some other results that I collected. So from the 123 undergraduate students, the range of CET scores were 13 to 84, with a mean of 53.15. A t-test indicated that participants who use fitness trackers had higher CET scores than those that do not use fitness trackers, the p-value of 0.03. If you look at the bottom of my results section, you'll see figure 2, which is a box and whisker plot displaying the average CET scores of those that wear fitness trackers and do not. As you can see, they did not vary by too much, only about 5 points. However, it still got a p-value of 0.03. A t-test also showed that males averaged a lower CET score than females, while a Fissures exact test showed that males were also less likely to use a fitness tracker than females. This basically shows that males in my survey did not wear fitness trackers as frequently as females, but they also have lower CET scores on average. A Pearson's correlation test showed no relationship between the length of time wearing the device and CET scores. If you look over to the top of my right-hand column, you will see figure 3, which shows this Pearson's correlation test. As you can see, the relationship is wanting to be slightly inverse. However, it is still a very straight line. An ANOVA test also displayed a relationship between motivations to exercise, which I had 3 categories of health-oriented, appearance-oriented, or both, and CET score. So in conclusion, the results suggest that college students who wear fitness trackers have a higher CET score than those that do not, with gender being a potential confounding variable. Gender is a potential confounding variable because the males, not as many males answered the survey, and males were less likely to wear a fitness tracker, yet they had lower CET scores. The mean of scores differed only by 5.13 points, which shows that there might be limiting clinical impact. There was only 120 points scale for this test, so 5 points might not actually mean that much in the long run on someone's life. It is also not clear what adverse effects compulsive exercise can have on one's life. Future studies should include further investigation on the difference of CET scores in males and females, as there might be a difference of how males and females respond to compulsive exercise. There also need to be compulsive studies investigating the effect of a high CET score on quality of life. This is so we can see what detrimental effects to mental health compulsive exercise can have or have not. Thank you so much for taking the time to listening to my presentation today.
Great job, Susanna. Let's see, I think you've got questions in your Q&A and you are muted.
Hello, so the question that I see is, did you see any evidence that fitness tracker use would be different in high school students or older adults? And then would you target a different population in future studies? So I actually did not see too much about specifically high school students or older adults. A lot of studies were about adults in general, which would include the college age population and older adults. There was one study on high school student athletes, but not too much about that younger population. And would you target a different population in future studies? I would consider definitely targeting different populations just to see how it might vary, because an older adult have a completely different attitude for using a fitness tracking device than the college age students, as like college is a pretty unique population in itself. And the same goes for the younger high school students.
Thank you. With your research, I'm sitting here looking at my fitness tracker as it's going off, telling me I need to walk more with the showcase going on. Susanna, how has your research affected you personally with your fitness tracker, since you said that you wear one?
It's definitely made me just more aware of my attitudes towards it. I wouldn't stop wearing it because of this research. I've been wearing one since I was a freshman in high school, and I love it, and it's really positively impacted my life in many ways. But it's kind of made me realize that it is important to also evaluate how it is affecting my mental health. If it ever got to the point where I thought I was being a little bit too obsessive about it, I would know that it's okay to take a step back, and like you can't always reach 10,000 steps every day, and you can't win every Fitbit challenge.
That's a great answer. I keep having to remind myself that. No. Okay, so great job, Susanna. And we are going to move on to our next presenter, Ava Gray. Ava, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to get your video started.
Hi, my name is Ava Gray, and the topic for my research project is daily added sugar in oral health in undergraduate college students at the University of Kentucky. As a young adult begins college, their diet begins to change, specifically adding more daily added sugar to their diet, which can result in different oral health implications, specifically the development of dental caries or gingivitis. This study aims to examine the relationship between daily added sugar and risk / presence of dental caries or gingivitis in undergraduate college students here at the University of Kentucky. And there is more research that is needed on this specific topic, specifically the sample population of undergraduate college students. So the hypothesis for this study was that undergraduate college students at the University of Kentucky who consume more daily added sugar will have a higher presence of dental caries or gingivitis. For the methods, this study collected data from 108 University of Kentucky undergraduate students, and data was collected through an electronic self-report cross-sectional survey. The survey was distributed via social media outlets, specifically different GroupMes that I'm a part of, including my sorority, classes I'm in, and different clubs I'm in here at the University of Kentucky. This survey included different demographic data questions, oral health related questions, daily added sugar intake, and screening questions that indicated whether or not dental caries or gingivitis was present. For these screening questions, every yes that a participant answered was considered 1 point, and at the end of the survey, each participant's points were added up to give them an oral health score, and the higher the score meant the higher presence there was of dental caries or gingivitis. And then a correlation test was conducted to compare the relationship between these two variables, and the results showed that after this correlation test was done, there was no clear relationship between daily added sugar intake and presence of gingivitis or dental caries. The p-value was calculated to be 0.024, which indicates no clear relationship between the two variables. In the correlation test below the results section, you can see that the trend line is just going straight and then down a little. There's no clear trend with all the different data points. The mean value for daily added sugar for consumed food was 3.47, and for sugar sweetened beverages, it was 1.03, indicating that more students were consuming more foods that had sugar in them or added sugar in them compared to the drinks they were consuming. And the mean value for the score, the oral health score, was 1.77, and a minimum value is of 0 and a maximum value of 9. And the demographic data is listed above in the first table above the results section. And for each category, the higher percentages are listed. For gender, it was female being 68.2%. For race, it was white at 90%. And for grade level, it was seniors at 40%. Over on the right, there are 3 different pie charts that indicate the results of the different oral health questions that were asked in the survey. The first one asking how many times per day you brush your teeth, and 80% of the participants said that they brush their teeth 1 to 2 times a day. And the next one is how many times per day do you floss? 60% of the participants said that they floss 1 to 2 times a day. And the last one being how often do you see a dentist? And 68% of the participants indicated that they see a dentist every 6 months. There was also 2% of participants that indicated they see a dentist every 2+ years, or they do not see a dentist at all. For the conclusions, the results suggest that there was no clear correlation between the students who consume higher daily added sugar intake compared with the higher presence of dental caries or gingivitis. More research is definitely needed on this specific population to examine the relationship between daily added sugar and dental caries or gingivitis presence. So for future research, I recommend recruiting a much larger sample population. I think with a much larger sample population, it can lead to more promising results that can support the hypothesis and also bring more diversity that can help also support the hypothesis. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think you've got a question in the Q&A.
Okay, the question says, are the results of your study reflective of other studies you read? any idea of average added sugar in college students across the US? So from the other studies that I looked at, a lot of them resulted with a more positive result following the hypothesis that I had, which was more dental caries and gingivitis was present in their study populations when more daily added sugar was consumed. I think the reason that my results didn't show the same results as these studies is because my sample population was so small compared to these other studies. I think with a larger one, I could have more promising results. And I also think that maybe some of my participants weren't as truthful for how many sugar sweetened beverages or foods they were consuming, or maybe they were and they just don't eat as many sugar foods or beverages as the participants in the other studies. But yeah, so the studies that I looked up prior to mine showed more positive results than mine. And any idea of average added sugar in college students across the US? I didn't find an average in my prior studies of added sugar that's consumed in college students, but I did just find that as a student attends college for the first time, there's more daily added sugar added to their diet overall for most college students.
That's really interesting. What was your favorite part of this study?
I would say my favorite part was just receiving all my results from my survey. I definitely thought that my results would be what my hypothesis was. And I think it was really surprising to see that my results didn't show or support my hypothesis. So I think that I was most excited to see my results thinking that they would support my hypothesis. But even though they didn't, I still enjoyed just being able to like research this whole topic and share my results.
The great thing about research is it requires creative approach, and sometimes it never comes out the way you expect.
Mm-hmm.
So great job. You did great presentation. I really liked your poster as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, and so we are going to continue with our next presenter, Mariah.
Hi, my name is Mariah Myers. I am an undergrad student at the University of Kentucky in the Department of Dietetics and Human Nutrition. Today, I am presenting how gingivitis can affect someone's health and how someone can prevent getting it. The mission for this research is to first see who has gingivitis and learn how to treat and prevent it from getting worse or even getting it again. Gingivitis is a mild form of gum disease that can cause irritation, bleeding, redness, and swelling to the gums. Most healthy gums are normally coral pink, but can naturally be darker with different pigments. The exploration of the way those with gingivitis are treated entitles reversing this situation by brushing your teeth twice a day for 2 minutes and flossing every night, as well as getting a regular cleaning from your hygienist. This can prevent having or getting gingivitis and can cause it from getting worse, such as developing bone loss, which is called periodontal disease, losing teeth, or even developing health issues in the future, like heart disease or oral cancer. In the photo below, it shows you what your gum tissue would look like if you had gum disease versus a normal gum tissue. So this table is of the college student in the university of the population, the sample population of demographics. It talks about a total out of all my participants, which is 24 out of 49 said yes to bleeding during or after brushing or flossing, which is a sign of gingivitis. 24 total said yes to bleeding, 19 total said yes, said no to bleeding, and 6 said maybe. The mean for both yes or no's is 4.375. The standard deviation was 8.484. The variance was 71.98. The t-test for one tail was 0.119721. The t-test for two tails was 0.239443. For only yeses, the mean was 6. The standard deviation was 9.416298. And the variance was 88.667. For only no's, the mean was 4.75. The standard deviation was 8.846, and the variance was 78.25. The methods used was the study sample that consists of the 49 college students, both genders, men and female. The data collected from the survey of the quadratics that was distributed on different social media websites. A cross-selectional survey was done and followed by a Fissures test. This study aims to focus on gingivitis and how to prevent it. The p-value for the study is 0.119721. How many participants gum bleeding during or after brushing or flossing their teeth. The statistical significance was measured along with the satisfaction rates. A total of 80% reported that they don't think that they have gingivitis, and 8% reported that they do have gingivitis. According to the total of people reporting that they are bleeding during or after brushing or flossing their teeth, 49% reported that they do bleed, and then 49% reported that they do bleed, and then 39% reported that they don't. Almost half of my participants reported that they do bleed during and or after brushing their teeth or flossing, which indicates that they do have gingivitis. So yeses average out of 6 more than no's, which is 4.75, and the people bleeding. Graph 1 is showing the percentages of people who do have gingivitis, which is 49% due to bleeding after or during brushing or flossing their teeth or gums. The second graph shows the percentages of the different races from both surveys of who all said yes to their gums bleeding. The third graph is showing a total of all races in their survey for the total of people who reported that they don't believe that they have gingivitis, which is 80%. The last graph shows the total of races and the percentage of how many don't believe, which is the 80% that I just said, that they have gingivitis. In conclusion, the results of the research, majority of the participants, 49% report that they bleed while brushing and flossing, preventing plaque from appearing and forming on teeth and gums that would cause gingivitis or periodontal disease. Gingivitis is a reversible disease. So for the future study, this should have included a larger sample size, should limit any self-reporting, and provide more talk about the bleeding. To what it means with the photographics included. Some more photographics included. So people will understand and know what gingivitis is and how they should be finding it if they do have it.
Hi, Mariah.
Hello. Wow, I'm backwards.
Upside down and backwards. Well, this is fun. I love this.
I don't know how to fix that.
That's okay. You'll just be hanging out upside down.
Okay.
This is fun. I love it. Nice project, Mariah. I think Dr. Houlihan has a question for you. Can you see it? Here, I'll ask. She asks, were you surprised at the results from your participants?
I wasn't really surprised. Oh, hold on. I wasn't really surprised because I actually work in the dental field, and I've actually seen a lot of people not understanding why they're bleeding, or they think it's something bad to where they shouldn't be brushing so hard or flossing at all. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that people don't really know what gingivitis is or that it can affect any kind of health problems.
Okay. And so what do you think was was there a most promising aspect of your study? Or let me ask a different one. As far as for education purposes goes, for just teaching people about dental health beyond so that they better understand gingivitis. Do you have ideas about how the education aspect could go?
I think just like educating people on the photos, on what you see, especially with gingivitis, and just telling them like about watching out for if you do bleed or any kind of infection or inflammation with the gums, and what your gums should look like and stuff like that.
Nice. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Nice presentation. I'm loving the
I don't know why. I wonder if I can I don't know. Well, it doesn't really matter now.
Mariah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then it appears that I missed, is it Katrina?
Yes, it's Katrina.
Okay, Katrina. This is fun. Okay, so I'm going to get started with yours.
Hi there, my name is Kotryna Dzekcioriute, and I will be presenting on the effect of gluten-free consumption on BMI in undergraduate college students. I've been doing this research for the past year, and I specifically chose to do this topic because I have noticed that a lot of people have been following the gluten-free diet even though they do not suffer from celiac disease, and I wanted to see if there was a relationship between a gluten-free diet and BMI in undergraduate college students. This study aims to investigate the relationship between gluten-free consumption and BMI in undergraduate college students by distributing a cross-sectional survey to University of Kentucky students. It is hypothesized that consumption of a gluten-free diet will lead to an increase in BMI in undergraduate college students. So a self-report cross-sectional survey was distributed to the University of Kentucky students via different social media outlets and various club group messages. Specifically, the survey recorded the age, height, weight, and reasoning for consumption of gluten or gluten-free products of the respondents. So I asked an additional question for those that responded that they do consume a gluten-free diet, which was regarding what type of gluten-free products they were most commonly consuming. And all of my participants had the option to stop the survey at any time that they wanted. So there were a total of 71 respondents, but of those, only 56 participants were actually used for data collection due to different exclusion criteria. In table 1 on my poster, you were able to see the demographics of my survey participants. So data was collected from a total of 56 undergraduate students at the University of Kentucky, and there were 64% female and 36% were male, and they were used in determining the effect of gluten-free consumption on BMI. A t-test was used in order to find the p-value, which would help to determine the relationship between gluten-free consumption and BMI in undergraduate college students. So the p-value ended up being 0.349, which indicates that the correlation between BMI and gluten-free consumption is not statistically significant. So out of all my participants, I only had around 18% that reported that they were consuming a gluten-free diet. And you can see in figure 2 on my poster, the percent difference from 17.86 reported that they consume a gluten-free diet, while 82.14% of my participants reported that they consume a gluten-containing diet. In figure 1, you can see the BMI category for the gluten-free consumers. So 70% of those that reported that they consume a gluten-free diet fell into the normal BMI category range. And there were 30% that fell into the obese BMI category. In figure 3, you can see the BMI distribution of the sample population. So there was 1.79% fell into the underweight category of BMI, 76.79 fell into the normal BMI category, 10.71 fell into the overweight category, and then again 10.71 fell into the obese category. So in conclusion, the results of the study suggest that there is no correlation between following a gluten-free diet and BMI of undergraduate college students. It's likely that the results are inaccurate due to the very small sample size of this study, the lack of diversity in participants, as well as the year in school, since the majority of participants were categorized as upperclassmen. And so those are a couple of my limitations from this study. So in the future, I would recommend to conduct a study with a larger and more diverse sample size in a different population. I would also examine the long-term effect of gluten-free and gluten consumption on BMI management, as well as I would assess other factors of the diet that could lead to an impact in an increase in BMI. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Very nice job, Katrina. Very interesting study.
Thank you.
Let's see. I think Dr. Julian has a question for you.
Yes, so the question reads, in previous studies, did authors indicate a higher BMI in gluten-free eaters? And so all of the studies that I kind of looked at indicated that there was an increase in BMI for those that consumed a gluten-free diet. And a lot of my studies that I looked at were specifically with younger kids who were diagnosed with either celiac disease, IBS, IBD, and they did indicate that there was a higher BMI in those children. And then what would you recommend for future researchers interested in this topic? Kind of like I mentioned in my presentation, I would definitely suggest to look at other aspects of the diet as well, because I know that there's plenty of other things that could indicate an increase in BMI other than just gluten or gluten-free consumption. And so that's what I would recommend.
Very nice. Very interesting. So I have a question for you. So if you were to repeat this study, is there anything that you would do a little differently?
Yeah, so hopefully I would get some more like respondents, because I really didn't have much participants. So that's something that I would definitely do. And then I would think I would ask a little bit more questions because like I mentioned in my presentation, I only asked one question to see for those that were gluten-free consumers, what gluten-free products they were consuming. So I would really be interested in doing a study specifically with just gluten-free consumers and seeing what products, like gluten-free products, they were mainly consuming and how that could indicate a change in their BMI. So that's something I would really be interested in doing.
Very nice. The great thing about research is you can keep going. There's always going to be opportunities and more questions to ask. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I skipped over you previously.
No worries.
We got this. Okay, thank you, Katrina. Okay, so now we're going. Okay, so we are now at Carrie. Is this correct, Carrie?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Wowie. And you all please feel free to like hop on and say, hey, Jesse, you missed me.
Hi, my name is Carrie Morrison, and my research presentation is on the efficacy of various birth controls on hormonal acne. So to start off with my introduction, we have my clinical question, which is what effect can systemic and local birth controls have on mild to moderate acne? The most common forms of birth control for college females is IUDs and oral birth control pills. So most women take birth control to prevent pregnancy, help with menstrual cramping, and to manage hormonal acne. Hormonal acne is commonly found around your jawline and the lower portion of your face. And most birth control contains estrogen and progesterone, which work together in the body, and it's usually called a combined oral contraceptive. And these have found to be successful. A research article said that 46% of acne lesions were reduced after taking one of the combined oral contraceptives. And estrogen is in our body, and it has helped to reduce acne lesions by reducing testosterone and inhibiting androgen production. So my hypothesis aims to measure the amount of lesions and the different methods of birth control to see how the levels of estrogen and progesterone work together with hormonal acne. So here is the demographics chart that I have made comparing the target population to the sample population. Obviously, my sample population did not meet the full criteria of the target population. So my methods, 97 participants completed my survey, but only 49 participants met the inclusion criteria, and the inclusion criteria meant to be an undergraduate University of Kentucky female. My survey was released on Facebook in various scrutinies, and a Fissures test was done on Excel to compare the amount of lesions to the systemic or local effect of birth control on acne. So my results, mild lesions were compared to moderate lesions, which were then compared to the systemic and local effects of birth control on hormonal acne. So to be in the mild lesions category, you had less than 30, and moderate lesions is 30 to 125. IUDs in this research were considered to have only local effect because they only contained doses of estrogen and not a combination, which most oral birth controls have. The p-value was significant at 0.0043. Most of the people on the combined oral birth control pills had systemic effects for their acne lesions, and 64.6% said that their acne was better since taking birth control. We also researched 2 other confounding variables to see if they would impact local and systemic effects of birth control. So we have a pie chart of the hormonal acne change, and we found that 64.6% or 31 of the participants had better acne after birth control, 25% or 12 of the participants had the same, and 10.4% or 5 had worse acne after taking birth control. Here's one of our confounding variables in which we looked at the when you're taking other acne treatments in conjunction with your birth control, and many of our participants were doing that. Another confounding variable was outside stressors that impacted. So we have stress, makeup, diet, genetics, hygiene, and certain medications that you might take that could impact the local or systemic effect. So conclusions, birth control in this study population was reduced with hormonal acne. Oral combined contraceptive pills are a commonly prescribed way to reduce lesions due to menstruation and increase birth control satisfaction rates. There does need to be further research, though, on defining systemic and local effects because every birth control form is different in dose due to the participants, the treatment, genetics, and any other confounding factors that play a role. And research needs to be done to focus on the individual types of birth control and see how those individually can impact acne lesions. The confounding variables in this research highlight that birth control alone may not help acne, but other treatments or outside stressors may play a role in that too. Here are my references, and this is my overall poster for my presentation, and I'm excited to answer any questions that you have.
Great job. I think Dr. Julian has a question for you. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
So the question says, in previous research, were researchers able to separate confounders such as other acne treatment in their populations? So actually, most of the research that I found in like the research reviews, they really didn't focus on any of the confounding variables, which that's what I kind of loved about my research when I asked those questions, because I liked how a lot of the participants were using benzoyl peroxide or low dose antibiotics to help with it. So no, the other research didn't really, they kind of just more focused on combined oral contraceptives and not really the confounding variables of stress or makeup or genetics or anything like that.
That's really interesting and exciting that you asked those confounding questions, or the questions regarding the confounding variables. Mm-hmm. So what are your plans? What are your plans next beyond graduation?
Beyond graduation, I am trying to go to PA school. So, and I'm also very interested in dermatology. So that's kind of why I chose this topic. So I think as a hopefully future PA, being able to educate people on birth control and acne and doing this research, I think will really like benefit me in the future. So I'm excited to use this into practice.
Very nice. Oh, that was going to be my question is, are you interested in dermatology?
Yes, very much.
Very nice presentation. Great project. Thank you for being here and for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, and we are going to our last presenter. Is this right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. So excited. Okay, Emily, I'm going to start your video.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Hayes, and I'm a senior at the University of Kentucky in the Department of Human Nutrition. For my poster, I decided to do research on the consumption of cocoa flavonols and the risk of depression in college students. I chose to do this topic because the transformation into college can cause a lot of stress mentally, and many people develop depressive symptoms during this period of time. By educating people on dietary interventions such as dark chocolate, these rates can decrease. A little background behind my topic: there are many pressures that are forced onto college students, which can cause an increased risk of developing depressive symptoms. Depression is a mental disorder that is continuously increasing worldwide, and prevention is the first step in treatment. Dietary interventions potentially are one step in reducing symptoms of depression. Consuming cocoa flavonols, especially dark chocolate, is a contributing factor to lowering the risk of depressive symptoms. Dark chocolate contains a high quantity of polyphenols, which are antioxidants that contain many health benefits. A specific type of polyphenol found in dark chocolate is flavonols. Although there has been research indicating consuming higher doses of cocoa flavonols, especially dark chocolate, overall benefits mental health, there's still more research that needs to be done. The aim of this study is to determine the relationship of cocoa flavonols and the occurrence of depressive symptoms among college students through a cross-sectional study. The hypothesis was consuming that cocoa flavonols, especially dark chocolate, is a contributing factor to lowering the risk of depressive symptoms in college students. In Figure 1, there was demographics done in the sample population. There was overall more female undergraduates that answered this survey, with about 66.3% being female and 31.3% being the male population. Overall, white non-Hispanics had the highest rates of answering this survey with 77.1%. The highest class standing was seniors with 51.8%. The methods behind this, this survey was collected among 84 college and undergraduate and graduate students enrolled at the University of Kentucky. 66.3% were female and 31.3% were male. Data was collected through an electronic self-reported cross-sectional study. Self-reported surveys were distributed to students via social media and QR codes throughout campus. The survey recorded demographic data questions dark, milk, and white chocolate consumptions, physical activity, alcohol consumption, and depressive symptoms. Depression scores were assigned using the PHQ-9 scoring system. A cross-sectional study and correlation tests were conducted. A correlation test was conducted to compare the relationship between cocoa flavonols consumption and depressive symptoms through an assigned score. From the results, a t-test indicated that there wasn't a significant difference between students consuming dark chocolate and those that did not, with a p-value 0.45. A correlation study test indicated that people that consumed less servings of dark chocolate reported higher depressive scores between 5 to 10. The mean depression score was 3.77, which indicates the sample population scores were below the indication of depressive symptoms on the PHQ-9 scoring system. More than 67% of the study population recorded exercising more than 3 times a week, and about 35% said that they consumed alcohol once or more than 3 times a week. The demographic data, like I said, was mentioned in Figure 1, which consisted of undergraduate and graduate students. There was 9.6% freshmen, 10.8% sophomores, 18.1% juniors, 51.8% seniors, and 9.6% graduate students. Majority of them were females, and the race and ethnicity was also reported. Now, if you look down at the bottom graph, I did the effects of dark chocolate on depression. And as you can see, as consumption increased for dark chocolate, the depression rates decreased. And serving size between 2 and 14, the depression scores were between 0 and 3, which indicated no depression. So that's really important when you're looking at the correlation between consuming the cocoa flavonols, especially the dark chocolate, and the depression rates. Now, if you look at the top right, there was the effects of milk chocolate on depression, and there was no clear trend in this data. And below that, the effects of white chocolate on depression were recorded. And as white chocolate increased, it seemed as if the depression rates increased. So when the rate for the consumption was lower. So if you look between the serving size between 10 and 14, the depression scores were a bit higher than between serving size 2 and 4. And so the conclusions I made were that the results suggest that consuming cocoa flavonols, especially dark chocolate, does affect depression rates of undergraduate and graduate students. However, more research should be conducted on why dark chocolate affects depression rates most significantly. For future research, I recommend gathering a large sample population to get more accurate results supporting the hypothesis. And below is my acknowledgements and the citations. Thank you so much.
Nice job, Emily.
Thank you. So for the question, it says, do you think there would be significant results in a population with a higher depression score? So I think that if there was more participants in the study, that there would have been a greater indication on whether milk chocolate had the same effect as dark chocolate did. I know that the rates for consumption of white chocolate were much lower than dark chocolate and milk chocolate, which was more popular in both of the sample populations. So I think that if people consumed more dark chocolate, that there would be a lower depression score, whereas when they consumed more white chocolate, there were higher depression scores. So I think that that's one correlation between if there's a higher quantity of polyphenols, which is highest in dark chocolate, then the depression score will be lower.
Nice project, great presentation. Now I just have a totally random question for you. Do you prefer white or dark chocolate?
I prefer dark chocolate. I don't know why. I don't really eat that much white chocolate. I feel like there's more options around for dark chocolate now too, and they're more people are trying to incorporate that into different options as well, like whether it be like frozen bananas or frozen strawberries or just in desserts in general. I think more people are being educated about
the effects of dark chocolate. So they're trying to incorporate it more into things. So I think that that also influences my decision on what I'm choosing as well, because there's just more options.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And this concludes this first round, or this first session. And great job to everybody. Thank you for your hard work with your research, with your presentations. The virtual project gallery is live, so you all can go over and see your projects. People can also, there's a discussion area in the bottom, or at the bottom of your project page, so people can leave comments, ask questions there as well, if they were not able to see your presentation today. Okay, so thank you, everybody. And I'm going to pause for just a few minutes, resume recording. Okay, welcome everyone back. This is session 5 of the 15th annual virtual showcase of undergraduate scholars. Session 5 includes students from dietetics and human nutrition. This is a reminder, this presentation is being recorded. I will upload all of the videos to our YouTube by session, and we'll gladly share those links with you as soon as they are uploaded. Questions are encouraged. So if you're in the virtual audience as an attendee, you will simply type your question using the Q&A feature in your toolbar. For our panelists, you can simply unmute yourself and ask questions out loud. Okay, and so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with our first presenter, Laney Hudson.
Hi everyone, my name is Laney Hudson and I will be talking about my research today about mental health and alcohol consumption in college-age students. For the introduction, since the COVID-19 pandemic, the prevalence of poor mental health status has increased with social distancing and quarantine. Thus, in college-age students, they are more likely to consume alcohol as they approach that legal age of 21. And this study was conducted to assess their mental health status of students and their current alcohol consumption. My hypothesis for the study was that consuming alcohol will have negative effects on mental health in college-age students. To begin, for the methods, a survey was conducted with 2 parts. The first part of that survey consisted of 8 questions assessing alcohol consumption. And the second part was a PHQ-9 questionnaire, which assessed the mental health status of the students. The survey was distributed on multiple social media platforms, and the purpose of the survey was to assess the participants' current mental health status and their current level of alcohol consumption. The data was collected from the survey and exported into Microsoft Excel, where a Pearson's correlation was completed. And out of the participants who did consume alcohol and did complete PHQ-9 completely were evaluated, and those results were recorded. For the results, they were exported into Microsoft, like I said, where that Pearson's correlation was completed, and the group of participants had a coefficient of -0.11, a t-statistic of 0.5, and a p-value of 0.3. So from those results, it was found that the 2 variables were not correlated, and the relationship between consuming alcohol and mental health were not associated. The figure 1 that I have right below the results is just a little figure showing the ages and the year in college for the participants. So you can see it's all around 20, 21, 22. And the conclusion for my study was that there is a lot of variable information to aid the hypothesis, but there was a limited amount of data to support it. So with having that limited amount of data, that caused a major limitation for the study. Having a restricted number of participants and self-reported data does not provide the most accurate and reliable source of statistics.
Another limitation of the study was the population size. For future studies, it would be really helpful to have more participants to show more of a comparison if there was one. And the participants who did not consume alcohol or complete the PHQ-9 were excluded from the survey. The graph at the bottom showed a comparison of the amount of drinks consumed in a 24-hour period. And the pie chart to the right showed a little comparison about if they were tempted to drink alcohol in a social setting. And the results were that peer pressure is strong, and most people do have that temptation. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Laney. So I'll start us off with a question here. So in other research that you read similar to your topic, did you find your results comparable to theirs in terms of PHQ-9 scores or amount of alcohol consumed in college students?
I actually did see that some of the other studies were pretty similar to my hypothesis. So I think that if I did have more of a population size that I would have gotten those same results, but since I didn't have like 200, 300 plus people, that it didn't show, so.
Good, anything else you would do differently if you were doing the same study?
I would probably shorten the survey. I noticed that people kind of like would answer 3/4 of the way and then they would stop answering. So maybe it was a little bit too long. So shortening that survey probably would have helped out a lot.
Yes, even the most experienced researchers have that issue too. So,
yes.
All right, any other questions? Make sure we don't have any. And there's a Q&A box at the bottom if anybody wants to add questions. That's how we were doing it in the last session. So now we've opened up the floor, but okay. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll move on. We've got Emily Huff up next.
I don't know if anybody else can't hear it, but I can't hear the video.
Yeah, I can't hear it also.
Me either.
Hang on just a second. I think she's going to restart it.
So you all could not hear any of that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so let's try this again. Have no idea why all of a sudden it stopped. Okay, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Huff, and
did y'all hear that?
Yes, ma'am. I think your mic was muted before, but it's working now.
Okay, fantastic.
I am a senior human nutrition major here at UK. I did my presentation and research topic over HPV vaccination and gender. To kind of start the topic, I know it's relevant, especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic, and vaccination can be extremely controversial during this time. I know there's people for it and against it, and it's really important for people to get vaccinated against HPV in order to prevent cancer, along with the spread of many other diseases. There's long-term health effects, especially in the young adult population. The goal of my study was to define the relationship between HPV vaccination and gender in college-age students utilizing a cross-sectional study. So I took a survey and I got 96 students total to take it. And it asked a series of questions relating to HPV vaccination, if you knew what it was, if you'd been vaccinated or if you didn't know, if you received a series of vaccination during a younger age, specifically around the age of like 11 to 14. After kind of analyzing this and reviewing my data, I found that the p-value was 0.01835. And this is important because it led to the rejection of my null hypothesis, and that vaccination rates were higher in college-age females than they were in the college-age male population. And this is important because it's common for more females to be vaccinated than there is for males, but it's important to actually vaccinate both genders, and that's kind of the goal in the future. And so the methods for this was that I distributed my survey electronically due to COVID-19. I kind of sent it out to GroupMe's and other various ways through the UK to kind of get a more holistic view of the population and get more responses. Of the 96 students, there were 88 females and 8 males. So that kind of swayed the results, but it consists of 12 questions. And as I said, they kind of asked about HPV vaccination, and they asked about gender, race, and age as well. And so I utilized a chi-squared test to determine the p-value, which I listed previously. And that kind of gave me the rejection of the null, which is the relationship between gender and HPV vaccination. And the results, I found that 82% of the females were vaccinated, while 50% of the males were. The results were shown to be significant, and the p-value was less than 0.05, which means that the null hypothesis was rejected and that there was a difference between the groups. The null hypothesis was that HPV vaccination in college-age females was equal to HPV vaccination in college-age males. And the alternative, which was what was accepted, is that HPV vaccination in college-age females is greater than HPV vaccination in college-age males. So as you can see, I have a few graphs on here. So the first one, have you been vaccinated for HPV? You can see that 72 females were and 4 males were, while 13 females were not and 2 males were not. And then 3 females were unsure and 2 males were unsure. And it's common for people not to know, which is why that was an option on there, because, you know, when you usually get this vaccination, you're younger and it's kind of up to your parents, that's also kind of a big issue with HPV vaccination, is that it's really up to your parents whether they got you vaccinated. However, it's not too late to get vaccinated, even if you don't when you're younger, but it's just more common that you do. But your provider hopefully still recommends that you do, even if you haven't gotten it at a later age. But it's recommended that you still get it before you're like in your 30s, and that's when it's most effective. And, you know, after then, you could have already come into contact with it, and the vaccination wouldn't really help at that point. So that's why it's important to kind of make this more known to the younger populations and have healthcare providers talking about it, because without the knowledge of it, it's less likely for people to get vaccinated. And another big issue is that people just, you know, you don't really hear about HPV vaccination a lot, and maybe it's that the providers aren't talking about it, or people just don't really know about it. But HPV is super prevalent in the population, and so it's really, really important that vaccination is done. And then the second chart that I have here was actually asking about whether or not a healthcare provider recommended the vaccination to you. And so 77 of the participants actually said that they were recommended the vaccination, while 6 said they were not. And then 13 were unsure whether they had been recommended or not,
which it's also extremely hard to kind of analyze that, considering if you're young, you might not remember if they recommended it, but at this age, I know that my doctor has definitely recommended it to me, and they've brought it up and they've asked if I've been vaccinated. And so it's important to have a healthcare provider that will be bringing that to your attention so that you can get vaccinated if you are not. And so the other chart on this right side kind of analyzed the population of who I had take the survey. So I had 8 male undergraduate students, 88 female undergraduates, and then 86.46% of these students were white, and about 1% were Black. About 4% were Asian Pacific Islanders, 2% were Hispanic or Latino, and then about 6% were other. And as stated, there was 96 students who took this survey. It would have been nicer to get more males specifically to have taken this survey and kind of see, that would have led me to see how many had actually been vaccinated in the overall public. So it kind of makes it hard to generalize with a small sample size like this, especially since I had to go through group meetings and stuff. So that kind of, makes it harder to get a more holistic view and actually see the whole UK population. And then the conclusions of my study, I said that overall, as mentioned previously, it's very important to get vaccinated for HPV to reduce the risks of cancers that result from getting it and having it untreated. A lot of people don't even have symptoms when they have it, so you might not even know, which is another big issue because it's just more commonly spread and it's very easy to not know. It's also projected that HPV vaccination rates will be on the rise as time passes. And one of the biggest issues is that since it is given during the ages of 9 to 14, it's really up to the parent to vaccinate their child at that age. And so it's really important that we, as healthcare providers, you talk to the patients about this and urge them to get vaccinated if they haven't been, and explain exactly why it is important and what it can prevent in the future. The lack of vaccinations may also be due to the rising numbers of those who are against vaccination. So it's also important to get out the information as to why it is so crucial to get vaccinated, even if you are kind of on the fence about it. And as a healthcare provider, kind of explain why HPV vaccination should be done. For future research, it's kind of, I think, important to analyze HPV vaccination rates in relation to gender and race and income and geography and health conditions, and as well as education, because these are all kind of big confounding factors that played a role as what I saw in my data. There's just, especially with this small sample size, it's kind of hard to see as a whole, but there was just a lack of male responses, and that kind of was kind of hard to see specifically how it was in the male population when there was only 8 male students that responded to the survey. So since there were more females, it's obvious that more of them will be vaccinated than the males. But it's still more common for females to be vaccinated than males anyways. Overall, I think this is a very important topic to kind of keep doing future research on, because it's a pressing issue and it's only going to become more concerning and prominent in the future. And it's really important as a prevention method to get the information out there that people need in order to kind of push vaccination. And I would like to thank all of the students who did reach out and participate in my survey. And I hope this is a topic that people look more into.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Very, very important topic. And I have a question and a comment too. So did you see in any of your research and other research studies outside of yours, are females getting more vaccines, HPV, than males these days? I know that had been a trend at one point, but
I mean, like that was past research. They're trying to like, it's more nowadays that they're focusing on male vaccination, but it's still not super prominent or like recommended by doctors to men like it is to women.
yeah, so the HPV vaccination will be in your guidelines if you're seeing pediatric patients. So it's kind of your protocol to follow that at 11 to 12. And so if you do it that 11 to 12 well child, you can group it in with a bunch of other vaccines. They get about 4 or 5 that trip or that visit. And so a lot of parents will say, oh, you're just getting a host of vaccines, to their kid if they're not ready or comfortable about talking about, why that is. But still tricky. I think there's still a lot of, hesitancy for people to get vaccines. So that will be definitely a challenge. And maybe, any other questions? Okay, sorry, we're cutting the Q&A session down for everybody since we almost ran out of time last time. So if there's not any other questions, we will move on to Chloe. Thank you, Emily.
Hi everyone, my name is Chloe Johnston and I'm part of the Department of Human Nutrition here at the University of Kentucky. Today I'm going to be discussing my research project on oral and topical vitamin C in college-age female students' complexion. This research project focuses on the college-age years and how much your skin changes. The changes in a person's skin can be due to a variety of factors, including stress, alcohol, dairy consumption, and food intake. It is hypothesized that increasing vitamin C in your diet will lead to better skin complexion in college-age girls than those who apply it topically. Throughout this review, the dietary implications of vitamin C on skin health will be discussed and compared for topical use. The key findings of this study showed that almost half of the female students who completed this were satisfied with the appearance of their skin compared to half who were not. 51.9% of participants said they consume vitamin C in their diet daily. 80.4% of participants would consider consuming more vitamin C to help their complexion, which was an important question to this project. The methods included an electronic survey that was distributed to college-age girls around the University of Kentucky by word of mouth. This survey was 14 questions long and was voluntary with no incentive. The only criteria you had to complete this survey included being female and of college age. A total of 109 people completed this survey, and it included questions about their demographic information, dietary consumption of vitamin C, topical use of vitamin C, and other confounding factors such as alcohol, dairy, and fast food intake. The statistical test that was used for this study was a chi-squared test. The results of this study can be shown in these 3 graphs below. The sample population for this study were all females, and 92.7% of them were white or Caucasian. The sample population was almost identical to the target population of college-age females, and the total number of 109 participants completed the survey. 50% of the participants said that they consumed vitamin C daily, 29.6% said they consumed vitamin C weekly, and 12% said they consumed it monthly. And 8.3% of participants said they do not consume these types of foods at all. Below question 7, it can be seen here with the bar graph, and it says, do you think vitamin C has an effect on the appearance of your skin? 75.8% of participants said that it would, and are open to the fact of consuming more vitamin C in their diet to help their complexion. Another confounding question was about supplementation of vitamin C, not only getting it from your diet. 30.3% said they supplement 500 milligrams of vitamin C or more per day. 55.1% of participants said that they have never used topical products that contain vitamin C, and this contributed to the results of this study significantly. 51.4% said they were content with the complexion of their skin, and on average, 3.6 servings of dairy were consumed per week and 2.2 servings of fast food meals. The pie chart on the right shows that the servings of vitamin C per week versus if they are satisfied with their skin or not. Above can be shown the p-value, which was 0.97, making it not significant, and the effect and sample size are also shown. The conclusions of this study were not significant and show that there was not a positive relationship between the dietary vitamin C and satisfaction of skin, compared to the topical use of vitamin C and satisfaction of skin. This study showed that dietary vitamin C did not have more of a positive impact on complexion compared to that of the topical vitamin C. It is recommended that future research be conducted to further support these conclusions and results. References can be shown at the bottom of the screen and acknowledgements as well. Special thanks to Professor Houlihan and also the students at the University of Kentucky.
Thank you, Chloe. Good, great presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question. And I know it's not really part of your research, but something I'm really interested in about vitamin C, and I've been hearing a lot about is, did you read anywhere about the serum or vitamin C serum over time after it's opened or stored breaking down at all?
Yes. So that was like one of the confounding factors that makes like good vitamin C skincare so expensive, is because they do have to like change the properties and like add stuff to it to make it not break down on the shelf. And ones that you would just get at like a department drugstore or something like that, it's going to say vitamin C, but the longer it sits on the shelf, it's not going to be very useful at all. That's basically what makes those good products so expensive, because they have to like change it so much so it doesn't break down and like decay.
Yes, I've seen some of the prices are hundreds of dollars.
Yes, that's one of the main reasons.
Okay. Any idea if you can look at something like that visually and tell, like, what would you tell people who wanted to invest maybe in a vitamin C serum?
It's hard for me because like one of the reasons I did it is because I've had so much success with it. Like I have a straight serum that was pretty expensive that was recommended to me, and it has like helps with acne scars and just like overall complexion. So I think if I had to do it again, I would try to reach out to even more people, especially not just in the college age, like older women as well, because I do think it can be very beneficial. But as a dietetic human nutrition student, also the food is like weighing more on me, because like that's the better way to go about things than medicine. So
absolutely, but it's a combination somehow.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Chloe? Okay, thank you very much. All right, Miss Haley is up next.
Hi, my name is Haley Jones, and I am a senior majoring in human nutrition on the pre-med track. And this is my study on the standard American diet and alternative diets on joint health with the help of the DHM program at the University of Kentucky, alongside my professor, Jessica Houlihan, in the course DHN 475. Today, we live in a society full of, fad diet trends, one-day quick fixes, looking at cultures and traditional eating patterns and finding out the best ways to preserve our health, either in the short term or long term. And amongst all the various research on how diet can relate to preserving health, joint health had the biggest gap in research. And so that's sort of why I chose it. Also, looking at my own health as a whole, I've seen that my joint health has started to slightly decline. And that could be from various other reasons, but I thought diet might have been the best one. Also, I am a human nutrition student. So I thought this would be a great connection to look at what I've been learning over the past 4 years and something that's been affecting my life probably for the past 2 years. And furthermore, this study aims to show, analyze, and discuss the relationship between these two variables, again, diet and joint health, amongst college students, and that looked at undergraduate and graduate students. And the reason why I chose college students was, again, this was very personal to me. My joint health has been slightly declining over the past 2 years, and I thought it'd be interesting to look at people amongst my age. And also it's interesting to look at, if you go through my survey that I might talk about a little bit, I do ask questions like, did you play sports in high school? And it's kind of interesting to look at the geographical location from where you lived at one point to where you moved to for college, and how that might affect your joint health over time and your diet choices, because again, the food you eat at home and the food you eat at college may be completely different. I know it is for me. Also, I played sports in high school and I don't play sports now. And so I see that even my physical activity level has decreased a lot because I don't have enough time due to studying, or I just don't ever think to go to the gym or even just go outside and take a run. So I think it was just interesting to look at college students specifically. And so going back to one of the questions that asked about diet classification, I felt it was important to highlight what my participants followed on my poster. And so 70.9% of them followed the standard American diet. And on my survey, I left the definition of what that was pretty vague, pretty open-ended, because not everyone follows, maybe super processed, high salty, high sugar, fatty foods. But if you do eat traditional American food, then, you do follow the standard American diet. But I do think that 70% of the number 70.9 does probably accurately represent the population. Also, 29.1% of them followed an alternative or restrictive diet. And also within the survey, if you chose that, you could go in and say specifically what you followed. And even after that, I asked, how long have you been following this diet? Did you ever change it for some reason, etc. And so if you look at my methods section, this was a cross-sectional study that hypothesized that the standard American diet will have higher rates of joint pain in college students, undergraduate and graduate, than those following restrictive or alternative diets. My survey link was sent out electronically. You could have found it in maybe a group chat that I might have put out, through social media, etc. And once you got to the survey, it asked a variety of demographic questions: age, gender, sex. I also asked about physical activity levels. I asked about where you go to college, because again, I think it's great to see the differences in geographical location of your diet, and therefore maybe exercise and joint pain. Also asked about diet classification and other various physical activity questions that asked you to maybe move your fingers back and forth, touch your toes, squat, and rate your joint pain from 1 to 10. And by the end of the survey, I asked 2 more personal or opinionated questions relating to: do you think diet has an influence on your joint pain, and would you ever think to change your diet in order to improve your joint pain in the long term? And the results were very interesting. And now moving on to the results of my research, I was pretty excited and pretty shocked about some of the findings. It showed that the results were not significant for joint pain in the hips and the toes. And the way that I asked my participants to measure that was, for the hips, they had to just stand shoulder width apart and do 1 or 2 squats, and then rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And then for the toe pain, it was simply just sitting down, sitting on the bed, and just moving your toes back and forth, and rating that on a scale of 1 to 10 as well. And I would say the reason why I'm pretty shocked about the hip pain is that usually most people my age that I amongst my friends, peers, always talk about back, hip, and maybe like their knees. And that was maybe due to playing sports in high school and kind of feeling some of the wear and tear on your body now. And it usually kind of happens around 21, maybe 22, maybe even 20, depending on the person and how active they were in their sport at the time. So I was pretty shocked about the hip pain, I will say. And although my results were proven insignificant for hip and toe, my hypothesis was proven significant for the standard American diet having higher joint pain in the knees, ankles, wrists, hands, or hand/fingers. And the way that I asked my participants to measure the joint pain in their knees was to sit just on a bed or a chair like you're getting a physical at the doctor's office, and just moving both your knees back and forth and rating them individually on a scale of 1 to 10. For the hands, same thing with the toes, just kind of moving them back and forth and rating both hands individually. Same thing for the ankles, sitting in a chair and rotating them, and same thing with the wrists. And another interesting part of my research that I did not expect to happen was the p-value for participants who followed an alternative diet, believing that the diet will preserve their joint health over time, was higher than those following the standard American diet. And the p-value for that was 0.00314. And so the main key findings in my research showed that overall, people following a restrictive/alternative diet experience less joint pain than those following the standard American diet. And so in conclusion, again, my hypothesis stated that those following a standard American diet will have or experience more joint pain than those following a restrictive/alternative diet. And while the hypothesis was not proven to be supported in hip and toe, it was supported in other ways. Again, so the hand/fingers, the wrists, ankles, and knees. And so another key point in my research that I did not expect to happen at all to further support my hypothesis showed that those following the restrictive/alternative diets believe that 1, diet will impact their joint health in the future, and 2, they would or could change their diet if need be in order to better their joint health. And recommendations for future research, either for myself or anyone else who wishes to dive into this topic as well, would be to use a larger, even a more diverse group, especially a more diverse age range, because age is definitely an important factor in joint health. But even for myself, if I wanted to do this again, I would definitely want a larger group. I try to expand it to not just the University of Kentucky students. I try to look at people all over the country. I know I have friends who go to different colleges, and they definitely completed my surveys. However, the numbers weren't large enough to show any significance. I had a majority of University of Kentucky students. I also didn't have a lot of graduate students like I wanted. However, our data time or our data pool wasn't long enough maybe for me to reach the amount of graduate students that I expected. And another thing I would do if I were to do this research again is look into diet and geographical location on joint pain, or even, anything else that I might think of later on, because it's interesting how my diet is somewhat the same. I'm from the Midwest, I'm from St. Louis, but I have friends who went to college in the deep south. They're in Alabama, they're in Georgia, or I have friends who went to the East Coast. They went more further north, they went to the West Coast. And I know our food is different than what they eat on the West Coast now. And so I think it's interesting how it might have an effect on that. So if I did do it again, I'd maybe ask more personal questions of what you eat now in college. Do you think that has an effect on your, overall health, joint health specifically, or anything else I might want to look into later on in the future? But yeah, my numbers just weren't large enough for them to be significant and to have any key findings or surprising results. And so to wrap this all up, here are my references and just some acknowledgements. I'd like to thank the Department of Dietetics and Human Nutrition at the University of Kentucky. I would also like to thank Professor Jessica Houlihan, who has been nothing but supportive throughout this whole entire process. I love her as a professor, and I am grateful to have her as my faculty member throughout this whole entire thing. I haven't done research since my freshman year of college here, and I had a partner who we bounced ideas off of each other. So this is all by myself, and I was a little bit nervous, but again, she made this process as smooth as possible. And I am nonetheless grateful for the opportunity. I would love to do it again if I had the chance. Also, thank you to the participants, whether they went to UK here or they were some of my friends who completed them, around the country. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.
Thanks, Haley. Great presentation. I did have a couple questions. Well, and I wanted to make a point about your research, which I thought was so interesting, is that you had all these confounders that you thought about, when you're doing your research, and, acknowledging that the regional differences in food and diet alone could completely change the results. And so I thought that was really important, to bring up that you had, you talked about sports in high school. And I do think would be interesting if you looked at different types of sports, if somebody did that in the future, what types of sports may have more particular pain or not. So, but my question is if you had to change any of your questions, related to diet or their understanding of standard American diet versus an alternative diet, what would you do if you could redo it again?
I might have not done pig diet as one of my variables. Like you said, there are so many confounding factors. So I probably would have done sports just because I'm really interested in it. Like you said, different sports probably had different wear and tear on the body. So I'll play volleyball. So I know my knees are pretty done for, but someone who might have just, I don't even know, some sport that doesn't have, I guess, as much wear and tear on the knees, and how their knees are now, or how the toes, ankles, hips, and all that might be affected. So I'd probably choose sports as my variable instead of diet.
I think that would be a good one.
Yeah.
Hopefully you will get to do it in the future.
Yeah, because there are so many diets. I mean, even when I looked through the responses for which alternative diet someone chose, I mean, it was so many. And then like I said, they could pick, or I don't know if I mentioned it, but they could specify how long they had been following it. And so if they had only been following the diet for a month, it's like, okay, is that really, an effect on your diet? Because that wasn't your main diet for, however many years. So it was kind of a lot of variety, I will say.
That's part of research. That's what happens. But well, thank you very much. And we will move on to Miss Margo is our next person.
Hi, everyone. My name is Margo Lawson, and I'd like to talk to you about my project, Consumption of Diet Drinks and Weight Status, a cross-sectional study. I worked in the Department of Dietetics and Human Nutrition under the supervision of Dr. Jessica Houlihan. To introduce to this topic, the world of weight management is full of fad diets, quick fixes, and products with unfounded promises. One common product in diet culture is diet soda. However, there was a gap in research on the effects of consumption of diet drinks and weight outcomes. So this study aimed to determine if there is an association between the consumption of diet drinks and weight change, meaning gain, loss, or management, in the college student population via a cross-sectional study conducted at the University of Kentucky. Within my key findings, I found that overall, there was no significant correlation found between consumption of diet drinks and weight status in college students. The demographic information included is shown via an interesting pie chart titled Racial Identity of Participants, in which it shows that the majority of the participants were white, then Asian, and then a small percentage African American. Within my methods in this cross-sectional study, it was hypothesized that diet drink consumption in college students would have an association with weight status in college students. Data was collected via self-report survey from 19 students at the University of Kentucky, with most participants identifying as white females between the ages of 18 and 21 years old. Then a t-test was conducted. Of the participants, 31% reported consuming diet drinks. And of those participants who consumed diet drinks, 33% reported that they consumed diet drinks to lose weight. Through statistical testing, again, there was no significant correlation found between the consumption of diet drinks and weight status. Within results, the statistical t-testing showed that there was again not a significant relationship. As you can see, the correlation was shown through the determined p-value of 0.86 between consuming diet drinks with the goal of weight loss, meaning that no correlation was found. In conclusion, it was hypothesized that there would be a positive correlation between increased diet drink consumption and reduced weight. This hypothesis was not supported, by the results. However, due to the small population size in this study, further research could be needed. In future research, a larger population size, greater variation in demographics, and clinical supervision could be useful in gathering results and representing the population at large. The graphical data also shown via the pie chart titled Diet Drink Consumption in Participants showed that most within the study did not actually consume diet drinks. Additionally, through the bar graph on the right, it shows the number of participants dieting to change weight status. While most said that they were not, in fact, dieting with the goal of weight status change, Some reported yes, they were trying to, in fact, lose weight. There was no one changing their diet to gain or maintain weight. Thank you all for listening. Again, my overall findings were there was no significant correlation, but this could be an area that further research is needed to determine clinically significant results. My references are included in the bottom right corner, listed 1 through 3. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Great presentation. I just have one quick question, maybe quick. So did you, in any other studies, did you see like a larger portion of people who consume diet sodas compared to non-diet soda drinkers? Did you see did they see a difference in BMI or weight?
Actually, it was like a lot of research was done on consumption of sugar sweetened beverages versus like water, not really artificial sweeteners. And that's what I was kind of more looking at. There was a real gap in research, and I was surprised because I feel like there's opportunity between all of the artificial sweeteners that we have now for, you know, that to be an interesting topic. But actually, no, I didn't find very much research at all.
No, that is a missed opportunity. So I hope that somebody will, you know, pick that up in the future, because you know, you do see a pretty good, you know, portion of our population, maybe not in college age, but older drinking diet.
Definitely.
Diet or sugar-free drinks. So, okay, well, thank you. And we're gonna zip on to Lillian since we're already at 5:17.
Hi everyone, my name is Lillian Maxwell, and I am a senior human nutrition student here in the Department of Dietetics and Human Nutrition at the University of Kentucky. So the title of my project today is The Impact of Dairy Consumption on Acne Prevalence. So I chose to do this topic for my presentation because I am a pre-med student who is matriculating into medical school in the fall. And so I've been just thinking about the different types of specialties that I'm interested in and what I might want to pursue for a career. And I think that dermatology might be one of those. So I just thought it would be fun to learn more about the field of dermatology through this project. So for some background information, the literature that I read on this topic stated that there's evidence for a positive correlation between acne prevalence and dairy consumption. So all that means is basically as a person's dairy consumption increases, typically so does their acne severity. However, few studies have actually focused on the correlation between specifically skim milk and acne severity, which is the aim of this research. So I will say that the few studies that I did read on the correlation between skim milk and acne severity also showed that there was a positive correlation between those two variables. So basically this project is just evaluating that relationship further. So you can see in the chart below the background section titled Demographics of the Sample Population, just a description of the sample population of this study. And I will say that those findings are not representative of the real target population of students here at the University of Kentucky, which could have implications for my results. So for the methods, this was a cross-sectional study that had a sample size of 76 undergraduate students from the University of Kentucky, and the students completed a validated survey with questions about dairy consumption and acne severity over a 1-month period. So basically, participants were asked at one point in time to just recall their dairy consumption and acne severity for the month prior to when they were taking the survey. So then a Pearson correlation relating total dairy consumption and acne severity was done, and a t-test was also done to relate several variables, including the relationship between the type of milk consumed and acne severity. So for the results, the Pearson correlation test showed that there was actually not a statistically significant relationship between total dairy consumption and acne severity. So you can see on the chart below the results section titled The Effect of Dairy Consumption on Acne Severity that there is no correlation there. And then the results of the t-test relating the type of milk consumed and acne severity showed that whole milk was actually found to be a statistically significant driver for increased acne severity with a p-value of 0.0478. So you can see that these findings are actually very contradictive of the literature search that was done prior to when I did this study. But we did find that 50% of participants who drank 2% milk used an acne treatment, and 75% of participants who drank skim milk used an acne treatment. So this could mean that those participants, when they were taking the survey, may not have actually seen acne present on their face in the past month for when they were consuming dairy. But since they were using acne treatments, that could mean that that acne was just masked or treated, which means that there still could be a relationship between skim milk consumption and acne severity. Just these participants were using acne treatment, which could have masked that relationship. So although we can't imply correlation or causation from this relationship, we do just need to remember these findings when thinking about the results of this study. So you can see on the right side here, the chart titled percentage of participants that drank certain types of milk and used acne treatments. This is just a summary of the types of treatments that these participants were using. So you can see some used benzoyl peroxide, isoretinoids, oral antibiotics, topical retinoids, other treatments, and then some participants used no acne treatment. So for conclusion, these results contradict the findings in the literature review, which could be due to many limitations. So future studies should include a large sample size, limit self-reporting, have participants refrain from using acne treatments during the study, and should have participants' acne severity evaluated by a dermatologist. So just for a summary of my results or a short take-home message, I will say that there was not a statistically significant relationship found between total dairy consumption and acne severity. And also whole milk was seen to be a statistically significant driver for increased acne severity. So I just want to say thank you for coming to listen to my presentation today and let you know that I'll be available for questions afterwards.
Right, nice presentation, Lillian. Very interesting. We have a lot of future dermatologists in this class. So I just have a really quick question for you. In your research and thinking about dairy and acne, would there have been a second place, either diet variable or lifestyle variable that you would have looked at after dairy in terms of acne?
Yeah, if I had to think about it, I would probably say like a high fat diet or a diet with like a high glycemic load. Because I remember one of the studies in the literature review that I looked at that, and it also had implications for like acne severity when a person was consuming a diet that was high in fat or high in sugar, high in carbs. So I'd probably look at that in addition to dairy.
Sounds good. Okay, well, thank you very much. Great presentation. And we'll move on to Thomas Payne, or as we know him, Luke.
The effect of COVID-19 on taste and smell of young adults. There's been thorough research conducted over the course of the last year surrounding COVID-19. A relationship that has not been intensely analyzed is the age of individuals who test positive for the virus and which symptoms they will most likely have. This study aims to analyze and provide more information to further study adults aged 18 to 22 who have tested positive for COVID-19 and may have lost their sense of taste and smell as a result. The target population for this survey before beginning the process was adults who had tested positive for COVID-19 aged between 18 and 22. When comparing that to the sample population and the results from the survey, it was seen that most frequently adults aged 20 to 24 were the participants who lost their sense of taste and smell. More information about the ages and symptoms are found below in the Qualtrics survey report. In order to better analyze my results, a t-test was run. My independent variable for the study is the age of positive participants. My dependent variable is those who lost taste and smell. For the t-test, I used two different groups. I used the group of my population that had lost taste and smell who are under the age of 22, and I used the group that had lost taste and smell who are over the age of 22. The results of the study suggested There were many adults aged 18 to 22 that lost their sense of taste and smell as a result of COVID-19. To be exact, 88% of my sample population lost their sense of taste and smell. The senses loss did not only affect young adults. Many survey participants were adults over the age of 22 and also lost their sense of taste and smell. This means the hypothesis that almost all positive tests that lost taste and smell were aged between 18 and 22 was an incorrect hypothesis.
Okay, thank you, Luke. In your research, did you ever see, about how long participants lost taste and smell? I don't know if they've even really looked at that yet.
It's so new. I didn't really see, but I do know personally it was about 3 months, which was why I was really drawn to this topic. I know people seemed, when I was dealing with the problem, I would be asking everybody, and they're like, I got it back within like 14 days. But I still know people who had COVID 4 or 5 months ago, and their taste and smell is still like really. It's me. I've got it mostly back, but like there's some things that don't really, like there's smells that are different and there's tastes that are different. It's kind of weird.
It is really interesting. Did you see anywhere where there were particular tastes, or I know you mentioned some things that came back earlier than others. Was there anything like sweet or salty that tended to be?
Salty was like the first to come back. For something that smells really weird is coffee and like chocolate. It's like not the same as it used to be. So kind of, I don't really like it, but it's just kind of how it is. I'm glad to have, when you go for a while with zero taste and smell, you're like, this is awful. Something's got to change.
Absolutely. Now, back in a few years ago, we used to do a class where we had somebody come in from the Markey Cancer Center, and he would talk about how sometimes radiation or other treatments for cancer would impact smell and taste in patients, and how debilitating that was. And that was the one thing that they wanted back the most. So, I think we'll continue to see, research in this, because this is really an unexpected, I guess, consequence of this.
Right. It can affect you mentally. Like it really like mentally affected me for a little while. And I was like, this gotta change.
Right. Well, I'm glad you're getting it back. So great topic. I love that, that the newness and that uniqueness of that topic. So, okay. We're going on to Ellie.
Hello, my name is Ellie Ransdell. I'm an undergraduate student in the Department of Dietetics and Human Nutrition at the University of Kentucky. My faculty mentor for this project was Jessica Houlihan, and I'm excited to share with you the results of my study titled The Effect of Academic Stress on Added Sugar Intake. Research has established a relationship between impulsivity and processed food intake, especially on the college campus. What is not known, however, is the extent to which college students may utilize added sugar as a coping mechanism for academic stress. This study aims to explore the relationship between academic stress and added sugar intake via a cross-sectional survey to undergraduate students at the University of Kentucky. The following chart outlines demographic information from respondents. And this information was also included to understand if my data from the survey could be generalizable to UK's overall population. Data was collected from 159 undergraduate students enrolled at the University of Kentucky. Self-reporting surveys were distributed via several social media outlets and through QR code scanning. The survey recorded students' perceived stress, and that was used via the perceived stress score, which is a validated tool. Also, subjective stress was measured, where we asked students to rank their stress related to academics on a scale of 0 to 10, and they did that 3 times before, during, and after exam week. We measured student attitudes toward sugar intake and the amount of sugary foods that were consumed each of those 3 weeks. The perceived stress scale score with total sugar intake was analyzed with a ranked ANOVA test, and the subjective stress scores with weekly sugar intake were analyzed with ranked correlations. There's a demonstrated strong positive relationship between the overall perceived stress scale score and total added sugar intake. We can see that in our figure 3 on the right. This strong relationship is seen before, during, and after exam week. What's interesting, however, is that our subjective stress scores were not as matched throughout. So we don't see any relationship between subjective stress and added sugar intake before exam week, but we do see correlations between our subjective stress scores and added sugar intake during and after exam week. So students who were categorized as low stress according to the PSS had the greatest percent change in added sugar due to stress. So students who scored below a 13 demonstrated the greatest percent change in their added sugar intake. So we saw a 46.1% drop in their added sugar intake before exam week to after exam week. And then moderately stressed students, those who scored between 14 and 26, had a 37.3% reduction in their added sugar intake. And then surprisingly, our high stress students only saw 31.3% reduction in their added sugar intake before and after exam week. Therefore, all students demonstrated an increased sugar intake in response to stress, but dependence upon added sugar correlated with objective stress levels. So if we turn our attention to figure 3, we see the relationship between the perceived stress score and total added sugar intake. So these high stress students in this category over here, who score between 27 and 40, actually consumed 32% more added sugar than moderately stressed students who score between 14 and 26. And then our moderately stressed students consumed 74% more added sugar than those students who scored in the low stress category, less than 13. I also think this is interesting because the perceived stress score does not really measure stress by week as the subjective stress scores did, but rather measures stress within the last month. And that maybe demonstrates a more chronic picture of sugar intake habits. Also, figure 1 down here in the middle demonstrates the drop in added sugar intake depending on the week. As you can see, the most added sugar is consumed before exam week, and that number tapers off as exam week passes. And then also figure 2 below demonstrates subjective stress scores depending on the week, with students being most stressed during exam week. It is interesting to consider that no correlation was seen between stress before exam week and added sugar consumed that week, but we do see a strong correlation during and after exam week with added sugar scores. Finally, exam 4 demonstrates student attitudes towards added sugar intake, with 64% of students agreeing with the belief that eating what they want, comfort foods during stressful weeks, will help them feel less stressed. Therefore, the results suggest that undergraduate students at the University of Kentucky consume more added sugar as academic stress increases. The amount consumed is related to overall stress level, with higher stress students consuming more added sugar overall, but with the least percent change in added sugar intake. Because added sugar intake is a predictor of anxiety in male and female college students, more research is needed to evaluate consequences of increased added sugar intake in stressful environments. Thank you.
Great job, Ellie. I know from our conversations that you wanted a different study design, which I'm sure most people didn't know about, that you wanted to, I guess, assess stress and sugar intake of the same population multiple times, but we were limited on that. But other than that, what would you change in your study if you could go back and do it again?
That's a great question. Well, this gave me plenty to do, so I don't have any regrets about what the study design was this time. I think that what was most interesting to me is that the subjective stress score did not show that same pattern as the objective stress score. So that kind of makes me wonder if there were stress factors not related to academics that were influencing that sugar intake. So I think if I could go back, I'd probably include some kind of question that's like, do you feel like all of your stress is coming from academics purely, or are there other life factors that are contributing to that? So if I could go back, then I could kind of eliminate any of those high PSS scores that weren't actually related to academics would probably be my biggest change.
I think that sounds like a great suggestion, because you're right. There's a lot else that, besides school that you lead to stress. So, well, thank you very much. And we're going to move on to our next one, to Shaylla.
Hi, my name is Shaylla Shelton, and today I'm going to do a presentation on examining the effects of daily fluid intake on sleep quality in adults. It is recommended that adults get 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night. Without enough sleep, it can lead to both physical and mental concerns. For example, increased risk for obesity and trouble concentrating. While the duration of sleep again is important, so is sleep quality. Sleep quality is how well a person sleeps at night. For adults, this means that an individual falls asleep in 30 minutes or less, wakes up no more than one time during the night, and drifts back to sleep within 20 minutes if they wake up. As we all know, water is important for our body. It helps us maintain our homeostasis. The recommended intake for adults is 3.7 liters for males and 2.7 liters for females. On average, though, 10% of Americans report they drink 2.3 liters of water in a day. There's currently not a lot of research about how an individual's fluid intake impacts their sleep quality, so this study aims to find a relationship. The study hypothesizes that adults who consume the adequate intake of fluids throughout their day will have a better sleep quality. Table 1 shows the sample population of the study compared to the target population. A total of 104 participants were included in the study. Participants were recruited through social media to take a voluntary survey. Information was gathered about their sex, age, race and ethnicity, water intake, other fluid intake like milk, tea, caffeine consumption, alcohol consumption, and sleep quality using the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index. Participants were then divided into 2 groups, consuming an adequate intake and not consuming an adequate intake of fluids. Using the PSQI, participants were divided into 2 groups again using their global scores. The global score of 0 to 10 indicated good sleep quality, and 11 to 21 indicated poor sleep quality. A chi-square test was used to analyze these 2 groups. Fluid intakes ranged from 7 to 260 ounces. The mean amount of water consumed was about 46 ounces, while the mean number of other fluids, for example, tea, coffee, or milk, was 15 ounces. Figure 1 shows that almost 70% of participants would rate their sleep quality as fairly good. Figure 2 shows that 36% of participants went to bed later than 12 a.m. The mean habitual sleep efficiency for this population was about 51%, which is pretty low. Global PSQI scores range from 3 to 17. When analyzing the chi-square test, it showed a p-value of 0.55, meaning that there was no significant difference in sleep quality between those individuals who were consuming an adequate intake and those who were not. Figures 4, 5, and 6 show scatter plots to examine relationships within the study. Figure 4 shows total fluid consumption compared to global PSQI score. It shows a very small R-squared value, indicating that there was no relationship. Figure 5 shows caffeine consumption and the global PSQI score, and this one also had a very low R-squared value. And figure 6 shows the total fluid consumption and sleep duration, which also had a very small R-squared value, indicating no relationship between the 2. In conclusion, the study found that there's no difference in sleep quality between those who consume the recommended number of fluids and those that do not. There's very little correlation between total fluid intake and sleep duration. Caffeine had no effect on the sample population sleep quality, but the sample size of this study was very small and not representative of the target population. So the study may not be generalizable. Future research going forward should assess fluid intake levels and sleep quality to provide more accurate results that incorporate the diversity of the target population.
Right, thank you, Shaylla. Great presentation, very interesting topic. And so several of you know I'm really into sleep quality for health, especially in kids. So what do you think would be, fluid intake I think is really important. What would you think would be another confounding factor that would maybe play a role in their sleep quality?
Well, since most of my participants were like college age, I had it a broad age group from like 18 and older. But when I think it was Ellie, when she was doing my peer reviews, she brought up like a good point that like maybe since it's like my sample population was college age, that we all have a lot of roommates and that roommates could be coming in and out at night and being loud. And so I think that could probably be a contributing factor. But also with older people, you have kids and stuff. So yeah.
True. I know. I think it's probably pretty individual.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great. I think it's a great topic, and I'm sure something that will be further researched in the future. Okay. Thank you. All right. We're got two more presenters here. Lucinda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucinda Smith, and today I'll be presenting my research on dietary triggers and migraines. Today, millions of Americans suffer with headaches ranging from just inconvenient to debilitating migraines. Migraines are defined as a primary headache disorder with recurrent unilateral episodes. They come with light and noise sensitivity and even nausea. Migraines are ranked among the top causes of years lived with disability. There are also a multitude of comorbidities related to migraines, such as cardiovascular disorders, psychiatric disorders, neurological diseases, sleep conditions, and chronic pain conditions. Many of the conditions listed all share the underlying possible risk factor of obesity. Unfortunately, some comorbidities are known as risk factors leading to chronic migraines. Around 50% of Americans have at least one chronic disease caused by environmental factors, such as a poor diet. Migraines and headaches usually begin with a trigger where individuals know an attack will soon follow. Common migraine triggers include stress, sleep patterns, hormones, alcohol, and other aspects of diet. This study aims to identify the relationship between common dietary triggers and the presence of migraines. To begin the study, an online survey was distributed over various social media platforms, including Facebook and Instagram. Table 1 on the left side of the poster shows the target population compared to those who actually participated in the survey. The survey asked questions about demographic data, the presence of headache or migraine, the severity of migraines, and the recognition of a trigger food. It also included a food frequency questionnaire of chocolate, alcohol, and dairy. There were 218 completed surveys, but responses were excluded if the survey was not complete or if any information was missing. After cleaning the data, 198 responses were taken into account for statistical analysis. The study found that of the participants that reported headaches, 53.38% of the population reported having migraines. When the individuals who suffered from migraines were asked to identify a trigger food from the following list, chocolate, alcohol, or dairy, participants chose chocolate the most often, but alcohol and dairy were closely following. This is evident in the bottom center figure identifying a trigger food, where chocolate is at 38%, alcohol is at 33%, and dairy is following at 29%. To find the relationship between trigger foods consumption and the migraine severity, Pearson's correlation was used. Of the completed surveys, 31 participants both received a migraine severity score and a food frequency score. The migraine severity was measured by the Migraine Disability Assessment Test. It consists of 5 questions about missed work or school days, missed household chore days, missed non-work activity days, and days at work or school where productivity was reduced by half. This test then uses the sum of these days to create a grade. For the food frequency questions, a scale was created where a higher score was associated with consuming a higher amount of the trigger food and consuming the trigger food more often. Pearson's correlation produced a coefficient value, a t-statistic, and a p-value. This computed the following results. Chocolate had a coefficient of negative 0.32, a t-statistic of negative 1.81, and a p-value of 0.08. Alcohol had a coefficient of 0.21, a t-statistic of 1.13, and a p-value of 0.27. Dairy had a coefficient of 0.04, a t-statistic of 0.20, and a p-value of 0.85. From these results, chocolate had the strongest relationship with migraine status, and it was defined as medium negative. This could be because individuals consciously exclude this sugar food from their diet. A weak relationship exists between the consumption of alcohol and dairy and migraine status. This is shown on the right-hand side of the poster where the 3 scatter plots are. There are several limitations to this study. First, the target population did not align with the actual population participating in the study. The majority of participants were white females, so it is important to note that results would not be generalizable to the public. Second, there is a lack of reliability associated with self-reporting, so the food frequency is likely inaccurate to a degree. Last, when participants are identifying a trigger food from a list, it is possible that participants were biased in making a selection. In conclusion, future research should focus on incorporating a broader participation population and ensuring the accuracy of the study. It is important that dietary triggers are evaluated so individuals can be knowledgeable when making everyday food choices. Thank you for your time and attention, and I will be available to answer any questions.
Great presentation. I don't suffer from migraines, but do you? Is that why you chose this topic?
Yeah, and actually I didn't really start suffering from them until I got in college. So I never knew if it was like stress from college that triggered it or my diet. And that's actually what gave me the idea for this research.
And so I bet you know your trigger food, right?
I feel like it has to be chocolate, of course, the best one.
I know. Right. Well, so did other research studies? I mean, honestly, I did not know that about chocolate, and I'm really surprised. I mean, I'm surprised, I guess. Is that a typical trigger?
Yeah, and well, most of the research that I looked at actually identified alcohol. And then it was very common that a lot of them had a lot of people that suffered from migraines and consumed a lot of the trigger foods, but couldn't like identify a real relationship between them.
Right. Interesting stuff. Well, thank you very much for a great presentation. And we're 3 minutes over, so we're going to go right on to our next presenter, to George. Ooh.
Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is George Butros. I'm currently a senior here at the University of Kentucky, an undergraduate student majoring in human nutrition. The topic for my research today would be the effects of Juul e-cigarette on memory and attention among college students. So a little bit of background to get started. E-cigarettes have risen in popularity among college students around the United States. These e-cigarettes contain a variety of ingredients such as nicotine, propylene glycol, glycerine, and benzoic acid. The nicotine contained in these e-cigarettes provide its users with a buzz similar to smoking tobacco. The effects these e-cigarettes impose on college students is a topic that has not been widely researched. However, a variety of research has been done on nicotine, with some studies showing its usage can improve memory and attention. The aim of this research is to determine the effects of Juul e-cigarette use on memory, attention, and grade point average among college students at the University of Kentucky. The methods in this study. So this study utilized a cross-sectional survey to gather data. This study was distributed electronically due to circumstances with COVID-19 and university-wide group messages and social media posts at UK. Participants included in the study must have been an undergraduate student at the University of Kentucky and Participants were only excluded from the study if they had any physical, mental, or emotional conditions causing serious difficulty in concentrating, remembering, or making decisions, as this would affect gathering data on memory and attention later in the study. So data was collected and analyzed through Qualtrics. Participants' demographics were recorded and asked to report information about e-cigarette usage. A questionnaire was also given that recorded memory interpretation, attention, and grade point average. ANOVA tests were conducted to examine the relationship by comparing the differences among averages of GPA, attention score, and memory interpretation between the three groups of users. So the results section, so as you can see in figure 1.0 on the top left, these are the demographics of the participants in the study. So 57 male undergraduates and 43 female undergraduates in the study. 87% of participants were white, 8% of participants were Black or African American, 4% of participants were Asian, and 1% were other. As you can see on the chart on the right, we have user classification percentage. So in the survey, participants were asked to classify themselves based on their usage of e-cigarettes. So we saw 31% of users categorize themselves as daily users. We saw 28% of participants categorize themselves as occasional users, and around 41% of participants categorize themselves as non-users or have never tried. And then as you can see in the bottom, in table 1.0, we have the results of the ANOVA tests. So comparing user group classification versus the attention T-scores, memory T-scores, and GPA. We see p-values all greater than 0.05, showing no statistically significant relationships between any of these variables. So to conclude, this study failed to find a significant relationship between Juul e-cigarette usage and memory, attention, and GPA. However, a significant relationship was found between gender within the user classification groups. Participants that classified as non-users were more likely to be females, while participants that classified as occasional users were more likely to be male. Overall, the effects of nicotine's influence on cognition have been inconsistent and need more research. It should be recommended for future studies to use similar demographic participants as in university students, as this population most likely has a high usage of nicotine and the least research done. Future research should also investigate the long-term health effects of e-cigarettes as their popularity continues to rise and the risk associated with long-term use remains unknown. Thank you all for listening in to my study, and I hope to take questions here soon.
Great, thanks for a great presentation, George. So very interesting topic, and I think you mentioned long-term studies in the future. Because do you know from your research how long have they been looking at use of Juuls or things like that in health?
Well, so Juul recently came out. It became popular my freshman year of college. So if anything, I doubt studies started immediately once it came out. So probably no longer than 2 years studies have been going on.
I think we'll see that change, right? I mean, I think that we're going to see some additional information as we kind of get some space between when they became popular and kind of those long-term health effects. So you mentioned that it's increasing in 2021. So there's research out there saying even though people are like, yeah, maybe they're not safe, you've seen research saying that it's increasing in use.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the popularity is going to continue to grow over and over just over the next few years, and more devices, newer devices. The Juul is something that you can just bring anywhere. It's almost like a USB stick, so no one really knows what it is. You can bring it anywhere. Its usability is so scary, honestly.
Right. I know. And I'm hearing about it in younger and younger, even younger than you would hear about cigarettes or anything else. You're hearing about it in middle, elementary.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard stories about that as well. It's scary.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for a great presentation. To all of you, thank you so much. These sessions have been recorded, and I know many faculty who couldn't come today plan on watching these presentations. So I really appreciate all your effort this past year. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. Whoops, I didn't realize my camera was closed.
Thank you for all of your work.